Hi guys, Jake in here. So today we're going to be talking about the book, The Lean Startup. Before I talk about this book, I would like to share with you an interesting data, which is that there are hundreds of businesses that starts every year over the world and including the US. And when it comes to actual success of the businesses, over 20% of businesses fail within the first year. More than 50% go out of business within 10 years, and nearly 80% fail within the 20 years. So I think these are some very staggering numbers, and it's very difficult to exactly predict what you must do in order to find success and fall within the 20% of the businesses that actually succeed in the long term. So many business books have tried to answer this very question, among which is the author of this book, Eric Ries, who wrote the book, The Lean Startup. I think there are a lot of practical wisdom and application that you can implement in this book, especially if you're a startup entrepreneur, and especially if you're someone that's trying to start a business of any sort. I think this book is actually really good because it gives solid advice based on the experiences that the author himself has gone through trying to create a business that is actually lasting and effective. So there are very many good, solid advice on this book, which I'm not going to go through everything, but I will give you 3 main lessons that I have learned from this book, and I hope you enjoy the ride. And the first concept of this book, that is actually the main concept of this book, is the MVP concept, which stands for minimal viable product. So what is this minimal viable product? As everybody knows, one of the main quest for any startup is learning fast, because you're only starting and you don't have the database to work on, since you're only new and you're new to the game. So you don't have any data to work on. So it is essential for any startups to have a very fast feedback loop in order to learn and advance further and faster than other companies. So that's where the MVP comes in. So a minimal viable product, as the name suggests, is a product that is minimally viable for the customers, and you want to put it out there without going through the very long, typical product development cycle involving, long, thoughtful incubation period and strive for product perfection. That's not what the main goal of minimum MVP. Instead, it's to create a product as fast as possible, and then you put it out there so that the customers actually try it out. And as soon as you get the feedback from the customers, you fix whatever the problem is, and then you come out with the next version and the next version. And you want to have this cycle as fast as possible so that you can have the advantage of learning fast. So it's like I'm sure you guys heard of the scientific method, where it begins with a clear hypothesis, and then you make predictions what will happen based on those hypotheses. And then of course you have to test it out. And based on the test results, you get the answer that you want, or if the result is not according to the predictions that you have previously made, you will have to pivot and make a new hypothesis. And then, that feedback loop continues. You test it again, and you make new hypothesis, predictions, test it again, and then that cycle continues. And you want that cycle to go as fast as possible for the startup companies, because companies that have been around for a long time, they already have that database to work on. So they can have the privilege to look back upon what they have experienced so far. And then based on those data points, they can make products that will highly succeed. Even if they take a long time to come up with a product, they already have a database to work on. But as for you, someone that is just starting up, you don't have the privilege to, take a long time to make a new product, because even if you think you have created one of the best products out there, once you put it out there, maybe there are no customers for it. Then maybe nobody will find this product typically valuable for their typical use. So instead of trying to take a long time to make a product, you want to make that feedback loop as short as possible, make the product as fast as possible, put it out there, allow the customers to use it, and then have the feedback. And then based on the feedback, you want to create a new product, another modified product that addresses the feedbacks that you have got from the initial product. So the book says a head start is rarely large enough to matter, and time spent in stealth mode away from customers is unlikely to provide a head start. The only way to win is to learn faster than anyone else. Yes, so I'm sure you guys have heard about the story of the potter, where you have two groups, and to one group, the potter has them make one product for a whole month. One group, they have to make one pot for a whole month, and they have to perfect that one pot, whereas the other group have to make 30 pots for 30 days. And the result is that the group that made 30 pots for 30 days had significantly better results than the other group that made one pot for a whole month, which means the sheer amount or the quantity of efforts that you put in will have a better result than trying to put in one effort on a singular thing. So if you're a YouTuber, for example, instead of trying to come up with the best video and then trying to work on one video for a whole month and then coming out with one video for that month, it will be better for you, better ROI, if you spent more time making more videos instead of one video for the whole month. So maybe make one video per week, and that will be 4 videos per month, which will have given you a better feedback loop. You put your video out there, try to see what the viewer likes and what your audience likes, and based on the feedback you can pivot or try to make a better video next time, instead of trying to come up with one video that you think is the best, but once you put it out there, nobody is actually interested in. So I think this MVP concept was very helpful in understanding how to have a very fast feedback loop for yourself, so that you can learn and pivot based on the data that you have collected from the initial product. So the second concept that the book shares is the concept of measurement. So even if you have the MVP and some data to work on, how do you properly measure the effectiveness of your company? That's where you have to have a very effective and efficient and accurate measuring process. Most companies are satisfied with simply measuring a few metrics. As long as the numbers go up, they are satisfied. For example, I used to work at a distribution company in which, of course, the main object of any distribution company would be the sales numbers. But only looking at the sales numbers will only show you a very one-sided view of the whole picture. As long as the sales go up, if you're only satisfied as long as the sales numbers go up, you will not be able to have a holistic view of how the company is working and which areas actually you are having, problems with, perhaps that will negatively affect your company in the long run. So for that to not happen, you need a very accurate system for accurately measuring where your company stands at the current moment. So how do you know that you are drawing the right lessons from those changes and from those data points? The book suggests that there are 3 A's of metrics, which are actionable, accessible, and auditable. So what is actionable? For a report to be considered actionable, it must demonstrate clear cause and effect. So unless you have a clear cause and effect in your database, how this data came to be and what are the results of these data points, you don't know what actions to take based on those data. It's just random numbers on the picture. So it has to be actionable. It has to be, number two, accessible. Accessible is all too many reports are not understood by the employees and managers who are supposed to use them to guide their decision making. So for it to be accessible, you have to make it simple so that they can actually access those data and then make the right decisions that will help them make the right decisions based on those data points. So for example, the company that I used to work for that I previously mentioned has had a whole lot of data to work on, and they gave us a lot of data, but you don't actually know what these data translates to in real life. So you have a whole lot of data that's not telling you anything, that is just looks fancy on the paper, So you actually have to have a system where everything looks simpler so that even if you have a lot of data, you can actually tell what these data is pointing to and what kind of actions that you must take based on these data points. And the final one is auditable. It says we must ensure that the data is credible to employees. Those building reports must make sure the mechanisms that generate the reports are not too complex. So it must be auditable. It can't be just random numbers that it doesn't mean anything. It has to have credibility. So what reminded me after reading this part, the measurement part, is how Mr. Beast analyzes his video, analytics. And I have seen a lot of videos where Mr. Beast is talking about how rigorous he is in analyzing what kind of videos creates the most views, which part exactly. He breaks it down into like minutes and even seconds, and he can analyze exactly which part the audience has fun, exactly which part the audience loses track of the plot, which part people get bored and stop watching the video. He analyzes it in a detailed manner, and he's very detailed oriented, and that is what makes, I think, the Mr. Beast video very attractive, because he knows exactly what people want and he analyzes it very rigorously based on data, and he uses that data to actually implement and make better videos and better hooks to make a more compelling video. So I think that can also translate into business. You want to have data, but those data need to make sense for everyone included. It can't be just numbers floating around. It has to make sense. It has to be accessible, actionable, and auditable. All right, the final concept is the importance of pivot or persevere. So this third concept is about knowing when to pivot is very important for any startup businesses. So he says there are limited amount of opportunities that any startups have for pivoting their whole business strategy, because every pivot takes a lot of energy, of time, and of money. So you can't pivot every few months and whenever you want, because that means you have to ditch the whole project or ditch the whole strategy and start a whole new trajectory. And that means you have to put a lot of resources and money, and you have to give up a lot of previous ideas to work on this new idea. So that means you can't have a lot of pivots within your startup business journey. So he says the true measure of runway is how many pivots a startup has left, the number of opportunities it has to make a fundamental change to its business strategy. Measuring runway through the lens of pivots rather than that of time suggests another way to extend that runway, get to each pivot faster. So he says if your initial idea and if your initial concept of your business is not going the way that you want, and if it's not actually producing the results that you want, you would want to pivot faster rather than later, because it's not going to work anyway. Why put your effort into the things that's not going to work in the long run? So you want to pivot faster, so you want to know when to pivot. That's a very essential and important thing that the company needs to know and decide on, and the faster that comes, the better it is for your company. So he says the 3 reasons why entrepreneurs pivot slow are, number one, vanity metrics that can allow to form false conclusion. I think this ties into the previous notion where you don't have the very good data points to work on. That's why even if you're not going the way that you want to go, you don't have very clear metrics that show you that you're not producing the results that you want. That's why you just keep on doing the things that's not producing the optimal result, which will negatively, of course, affect your company. And number two is unclear hypothesis leading to impossibility of complete failure. So if your hypothesis of the reason that your company is not working is wrong in the first place, you will never get to a point where you will realize that actually this company is failing. If your hypothesis is this company has to go to a certain object, but that object itself is not right, then even if you get to that object, your company is actually not succeeding, if you know what I mean. So number three is fear. And I think this is very relatable because everybody has the fear of ditching your initial plans and strategies and starting all over because the effort that you have put in so far is so big, and the mere thought of giving up all that you've done and starting new will be, very taunting for anyone. So the solution that he suggests in order to pivot faster is to have a separate pivot or persevere meeting also, and having a clear objective mindset. So he suggests that each entrepreneur should have a separate pivot or persevere meeting for every a month or every 2 months, and have an open conversation about whether the company is actually going the right trajectory, if they are actually getting the results that they wanted. And if not, what they should do about it, if they should pivot, or if you think that you still are on the right trajectory, but you still need to put in more effort, then persevere and go further according to the initial plan. I think this concept is also very important and helpful for anyone that is starting any kind of business, because you want to try new things and you want to try out things. But if the things that you have initially planned is not working, you will have to pivot as fast as possible. And I think we like to hold on to the ideas that we initially held because you have a strong conviction that you want to do this and you put in all the effort at the initial start, but this is not actually producing the results that you want, then you don't want to ditch the whole idea. Because you're scared. You don't want to ditch the whole effort that you have put in behind this project. But if it's not actually producing the results that you want, it would be beneficial for your long-term goals to actually ditch the first idea and to pivot and to make new assumptions and you make new hypotheses and work on the new ideas rather than the old ones that's not effective. Like Einstein said, it's foolish for anyone to keep doing the same thing and expecting the same results. If you're not getting the right results, then it means that you have to try new things, which means you have to pivot. And you have to know when to pivot and when to persevere. So those are the 3 main lessons that I've learned from this book. And I think these are very practical lessons that you can actually implement in your day-to-day business and in your entrepreneurial life. So like I said, there are on average 4.7 million businesses started every year, but only 10% survive in the long run. So how to end up in that 10% will wholly depend on how you manage your business and how effective you are in managing that business. And I think this book, The Lean Startup, is a great guide as to how you can more effectively manage and strategize in the long run. Yep. So thank you for tuning in. And if you're interested in this book, feel free to check it out. Thank you very much.